Okay, lesson 4. The fourth Yama is Brahmacharya. Brahmacharya is widely, not only in yoga, but in all kinds of philosophies, spiritual practices, and religions, translated as celibacy. Now, celibacy means that you must refrain from sexual activity. So this is, for example, if you want to become a priest, a pastor, you have to vow never to engage in sexuality. So we know from the scandals that have occurred in the past several decades that celibacy doesn't work. People who are interested in becoming a spiritual leader are being told to deny a very strong desire, a very strong energy, a very strong need to qualify for that position. Scandals have occurred where people who are there to guide other people, people who are there to protect other people, people who are there to help other people, have become sexual predators, sexual abusers. So there is something wrong with this interpretation that Brahmacharya means celibacy or renouncing your sexuality. First of all, we need to understand practically what sexuality is. What is sexuality? Sexuality is the human being's instinctive mechanism, tool for survival. Because the function of sexuality, of course, we live in a different time now, where we have the luxury to enjoy sexuality with our partner or alone. But initially, if you look at the animal world, there's only one function to sex, and that is to make babies, which is a way to assure the survival of the species. And if you look at the number of human beings that are roaming around the earth, human beings compared to other species are very successful at that survival. So even if you are educated, trained in spiritual philosophies, spiritual practices, there is still this very strong instinct of survival that not only human beings possess, all beings possess this instinct. It's a little bit strange, actually, that we have simplified the subject so much. Just translating Brahmacharya into celibacy, denial, in fact, or oppression of one's sexuality. To understand Brahmacharya better, all we need to do is have a look at the meaning of the word. what it means? God. Acharya is living accordingly. Now, I thought I registered for a yoga course, not for a religion. And yet, yoga, philosophy, or religion, the idea is the same. The interpretation is different. Many things, also in yoga, because not understood properly, end up becoming dogmatic. And the true meaning, in this case of Brahmacharya, but there are many such elements in yoga and other philosophies and religions, we lose the meaning of it. And we just keep dogmatically repeating, it must be like this and this and that. And if you ask questions, people will tell you, yeah, just accept it as it is. Just believe. If you want to be a good person, just believe. So are we here in a religion or a religious class, or what is this about? Because you use the word God. That requires that we explain what God actually is. Because when I was a little child, my elementary school, before elementary school, kindergarten teacher would read from the children Bible. Children Bible is written in simple language with nice illustrations and so on. So I could dream away with the stories from the Bible. And when the teacher finished the Bible, she would just start in the beginning again and read the whole story again. And I could just close my eyes and dream away with those stories. But I soon started to question, because I felt intuitively the contradictions, the sometimes illogic of what religion is about. So throughout many, many years of contemplation, I developed my own idea. And I tell you, I'm an atheist. Atheist is a person who doesn't believe in God. And yet I'm very spiritual, and I do believe. I just don't believe in that simplified image of some old man with a white beard sitting on a cloud, looking down on me and punishing me when I do wrong. Because that is the idea that is being created according to the Bible. So what is God? You notice in the short time that you are here with the introduction workshop and only 2 Saturdays that we are together, I use the word universe instead of God, actually. And if not universe, I will say the higher powers. Because experience in life on the path of spirituality, has shown me time and time again, there is a consciousness out there. There is an intelligence out there that regulates life, not only on earth, but in the universe. Ancient people knew that. So ancient people were very respectful of nature, because nature is part of that wonderful balance that is being created by that intelligence, that universal intelligence. They started calling it God. And then throughout many hundreds or thousands of years, that idea of God has become distorted and misunderstood. So this God, that picture, I don't believe in. It's too limited. But the universe, the intelligence in the universe that established an order, I believe in that. Because time and time again, I have been confronted with that intelligence. Just try to imagine. The universe is filled with galaxies. Each of those galaxies exists out of millions, even billions of stars, which is like our sun. Many of those suns, those stars, have planets. Our galaxy has one solar system, of which the Earth is a part, and it has the only planet out of millions, billions of planets that we know actually has life, organic life. What enables this organic life is a very fine-tuned balance. That if that balance is not there, organic life does not manifest. A balance of what? First of all, there is a temperature limitation, up and down. If temperature gets too hot, life is impossible on this planet. If the temperature goes too far down, life is not possible on this planet. And not only that, for matter to manifest, there have to be the right building blocks. The building blocks that not only build rocks, mountains, trees, but also your body, your bones, your skin, your organs. Those are all built out of oxygen, carbohydrates, amino acids. If there is not the exact right balance of these elements present, life does not occur. If you realize that, you realize that we are very lucky to be in this place, because it is this place, out of all places in the whole universe, where the balance is so fine-tuned that it allowed for us to manifest. For me, that how do you say that in English? For me, that means God. For me, that exemplifies God. That is what the higher power is about, or the universe, the intelligence of the universe. There is order in the universe, if you understand the universe, what it is about. There are so many planets that are circling around, and yet they never crash. And they circle in fixed patterns, opposite to other planets. There is no chaos in the universe. It looks like chaos, but it's very organized, very ordered. That is what God means to me. God also means another thing, especially when it comes to spirituality. And that is where the word Brahmacharya tells us the meaning. Acharya means living the life of. Yogacharya, title that I received 12 years ago from the International Yoga Federation, means somebody who lives yoga, living yoga. If you engage in something for many years and you do that with your heart and soul, you become that. So as a yoga practitioner, you become yoga, and yoga becomes you. Yoga becomes part of your everyday 24-hour-a-day life. That is Acharya. Brahma means God. In this case, it's not really about the universe, although it is connected, but it is about the crown chakra. The crown chakra is the location where all your higher characteristics are located. No surprise, sexuality is located in the lowest chakras. So Brahmacharya is choosing a way of life where you cultivate the crown chakra, the path of yoga. But any spiritual path or any religious path in origin is in fact designed to civilize human beings, to cultivate a life that is not controlled or dominated by animal instinct. Why is this important? Well, if your life is dominated by sexuality and you have no control over that, there's a lot of violence. And in the past, it was even more common than it is still today. We live in a world that is relatively civilized, relatively cultivated, and yet sexual violence still occurs. Quite a lot, actually. Sexuality is natural. We cannot deny it because denying it, oppressing it, leads possibly even more to more abuse and violence. We need to treat it with respect. We need to treat it for what it is. But we also need to do something with our energy that otherwise manifests into a simple, primitive instinct to survive. You can see when there is war, there is much more sexual activity. Not only in the form of violence, but just sexual activity. Why? Because when people live in fear, the instinct to survive kicks in and you naturally become sexually more active. You know the concept of the graying societies, right? Japan is a graying society. Korea is a graying society. When people become very comfortable, Japan even more than Korea. Korea is on its way and getting there more and more. In Japan, people are so comfortable they don't want to have sex anymore. I've read news articles about research being done, and there are many people, it's not that they can't find a partner, they just don't want a partner. They're not interested in sex. They just say to the researcher, no, I'm not interested in sex. Young people in their 20s, 30s, 40s, who just say, no, I'm not interested. It's interesting because when there is turmoil, when there is fear, we can't control our sexuality. But when it is very peaceful, calm, stable, safe, secure, we lose that instinct to procreate. It's nature at work. Naturally, if you are a yogi or any other kind of spiritual practitioner doing it right, meaning that it leads to more stability, sattva, you will naturally be less dominated by sexual energy, sexual urge. So why is this important? It's important not only for our personal development, it's important for the development of the whole of society. Because it leads to violence, it leads to chaos, it leads to distraction. So humankind has transformed from living life like an animal where sex is initiated usually by the male animals, but it's only a way to survive, for the species to survive. We have cultivated Ajna Chakra through many centuries of systematic education. One of the main purposes of which is, in fact, to control our lower emotions and desires, our instincts. It is the reason why your government makes education compulsory. The government wants stability, wants development, growth of the economy. That's not possible if people are running all over the place, following their sexual desires. So the government in the Netherlands, if you keep your child at home while it is supposed to be in school, you get a warning, maybe 2, but then you're being sent to prison if you keep your child out of school. Governments find it so important that children are being educated. Why? For this reason. It's already difficult enough for government because there are always loose elements, there are always criminals and people misbehaving. And with compulsory education, they try to reduce that as much as possible so that the country can thrive. Countries that are in chaos, pay attention around the world, are poor. Companies where there is order, organization, are thriving, are very wealthy as a result. So you see that on a national scale, and it translates also on a personal scale. People who are dominated by their sexuality without any control, they're not going anywhere with their lives. While people who have learned to control, who have learned to transform that energy to higher levels of consciousness, they become active and productive. Not only to benefit themselves, but to benefit the family, to benefit the community, to benefit society. So that is the importance of this. But it cannot be imposed upon people in a dogmatic way by saying your sexuality is taboo, you shouldn't even think of it, even dream of it, it just doesn't exist. Because you violate the previous 3 yamas. It's violence upon yourself to deny your sexuality, it's a lie, and it's theft. So you're violating all 3 previous yamas by approaching this subject in a dogmatic way. So Brahmacharya is a person. You don't have to become a priest. You don't have to become a monk. It's a person who canalizes energy and uses that for constructive activities, study, work, spiritual endeavor, meditation, asana practice, etc. Caring for people without sexual motive, etc. Everybody knows in Korea these days, you had the Me Too movement, right? It started in America with Weinstein, big abuser of women, girls who wanted to become involved in become a movie star of some kind, become famous, who doesn't want to? So vulnerable people being abused, and it's happening everywhere. Not only in churches or spiritual or religious institutes. It's becoming clear it's happening everywhere. Korea at the moment also has its scandals with sports coaches and some of the K-pop stars are now being accused of not only bullying but also sexual abuse at some point in time, long before their career starts. But it's all coming back to haunt them. So in the time that we live in, it's not only about community, about society. Of course, it's about respect for each other. If you engage in sex, it should be mutual with the consent of both sides. For us, interested in not just spiritual development, which sounds like a dogma, but personal growth, development, becoming more and more sattvic, building harmonious relationships with the world around us, so that we start thriving, truly thriving. Not being able to canalize our sexual instinct towards higher purposes, we call it spiritual purposes, but very practical. Well, try to imagine what happens. I'm a yoga teacher. It happens in yoga circles a lot too. Scandals abound. If I engage in abuse of students, there will come a day that somebody accuses me of abuse and it will become public. What will happen if that happens, if that day comes? My reputation will be totally destroyed. My life will be totally destroyed. My future will be totally destroyed. And it would be even worse if I had a family with children who become the victim of that too. And there are many such examples of people who are very successful in a way and then end up destroying themselves because they were not able to control themselves. And it is ironic that often people who are successful develop a certain arrogance that makes them believe they have a right to do that. There are some very famous yogis who have destroyed their reputation in this way. You know Rodney Yee? Rodney Yee? Bikram? No? You don't know Bikram? In Korea they call it hot yoga, but hot yoga is based on Bikram. But Bikram became very rich. Well, he's not a yogi, he's a smart businessman. Bikram, a couple of years ago, was accused of sexual abuse by students. So it became a big issue because he's very famous. You know what happened? CNN, who first brought the news of the abuse, interviewed students just to be fair. They gave him a chance to be interviewed on TV so that he could defend himself, so that he could give his side of the story. It was a total disaster because he was so arrogant. The arrogance was just splashing off of him. He started accusing the victims in front of the camera. His attitude towards the interviewer was very arrogant. And with that, he sealed his fate. He became rich, has a wonderful wife and kids. He totally threw it all away. He totally destroyed. Nobody wants to talk about Bikram anymore. Nobody wants to practice Bikram anymore. So it's about self-preservation. It's about many things all together. But this is one important element. Okay? Brahmacharya. Do not deny sexuality, it's natural. But try to realize how subconsciously incredibly powerful sexuality is for both men and women. The marketing industry is based, for the most part, on manipulating your sexual energy. Why do you think women spend a lot of money on fancy clothes, makeup, etc.? Of course you can say, yeah, but we have a right to do that. Of course you have. That is not the question here. But you want to look good, which is directly, not even indirectly, directly related to sexuality. Men are no different. Many men in secret spend lots of time in front of the mirror to check their hair, to check their appearance. For us as men, it's also important that we are being seen by the opposite sex. You see this? It's just an illustration from the marketing industry being put there. You know, I wrote all these texts throughout the years, and at some point somebody offered to edit them and put all these wonderful illustrations there. That's our friend Sean, who did all that work. Ketchup with a hot dog. It looks like somebody licking a penis. That is how you are being manipulated into buying a product that you actually don't need or even don't want. The story goes about the brand Ferrari. You know Ferrari? Ferrari has a huge hood and a very small compartment, very tight, and no room for passengers. It's a phallic symbol. It attracts especially macho men, tough guys. And you know what? We haven't discussed the chakras yet, but the lowest chakra is the representative color of the lowest chakra is red. Now, things have changed because of commercialization, but Ferrari was built out of passion, not commercial motives. So Ferrari, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, was available only in one color. You will see old Ferraris are all red, directly appealing to sexuality, the lowest chakra. Now you can buy them in yellow, black, white, and red, of course, still available. But the only reason why they compromised is because they just want to sell more cars. In the past, they didn't care about that. They were passionate. Italian people are passionate about fashion, about cars. 40, 50 years ago, sports cars, they were built in Italy. Germany built decent cars. France built comfortable cars. But sports cars, all built in Italy. Lamborghini, Ferrari, Bugatti, all those brands. That's Italian passion. Now it's all been compromised just for commerce. I mean, it's not a bad thing, but just to help you get some insight into how marketing works. Try to be aware of that. It will save you a lot of money, possibly. If you don't have to spend on things that you actually don't need, but the need is being created by a multi-billion-dollar fashion industry that appeals. It makes you believe that you need something that you actually don't. Of course, if you have a job, you make good money, well, you have the luxury that you can actually just spend money without feeling bad about it. But then again, when you're conscious of it, you don't want to be fooled anymore. You don't want to be tricked anymore. You decide when you want to draw your credit card and spend money. Questions about Brahmacharya? Okay. I think I've said enough. How do you deal with this? Simply start with observing. Simply start with now that you're aware of the things that we discussed, start observing how it applies to you, how it applies to the people around you, etc. And gradually you build a picture that will eventually lead to you becoming able to transfer these strong instincts and energies towards more constructive endeavors. Sexual energy is very strong. So try to imagine if you can canalize that energy upwards and use it for development of intellect, development of intuition, insight and wisdom. One of the things of yoga is indeed doing that. The energy from the bottom being pulled upwards for higher purposes, literally and figuratively. Oh, I need to mention something about some form of yoga. What is it called again? Which for many people is kind of like a sex yoga.
Tantra.
Yes, Tantra. Thank you, Sean. Have you heard of Tantra Yoga? Strange. 5 years ago, if I mentioned Tantra Yoga, everybody had those naughty twinkles in their eyes. Because people who have heard about Tantra Yoga, they believe, are made to believe, that it is fueled by sexuality. So that is a kind of yoga where you engage in sexual acts for spiritual purpose, which of course has been totally distorted and abused. There are people going to Tantra parties, which is just a new age excuse for orgy. Orgy? So I mean, if you have a couple of friends and you want to enjoy having sex with each other, there's nothing wrong with that. But fooling people into thinking that it is something spiritual and special, that is damaging people. I once had a couple of students coming to class together, friends, who together with another group, as part of a group, went to India to go, you know, explore yoga. They went from one ashram to another ashram. And they came across a Tantra Yoga ashram. And it went like this. The first week, they would just practice yoga. Then they were told to draw straws. You know what that means? Drawing straws? You have matchsticks, and one of those sticks is short and the rest is long. And you draw a straw. And the drawing of the sticks would determine with who you would team up. And then you were told to withdraw yourself into a hut and have sex with each other. With somebody you have just met, somebody who would not be your choice of partner, sexual partner. So this is truly damaging people, especially women. Under the guise of Tantra Yoga, under the guise of something very special and religious or spiritual. So never ever. You know, the meaning of Tantra, again, like everything else in yoga, is sattva. Because Tantra is the shuttle in a loom. You know what a loom is? A loom is a machine to make carpets or fabric, like cotton or wool. So the Tantra is the loom that goes from the left to the right and pulls the thread, eventually building a carpet, a piece of textile. This is symbolism. Tamas, rajas. Tamas, rajas. Ping, pong, ping, pong. The word Tantra is simply indicating the process of life that fluctuates between minus and plus, between tamas and rajas, and our endeavor to overcome that. So it has a very deep philosophical meaning, and we just turned it into something, I don't know the right word in English, perverted. So, good that you haven't heard about Tantra. If you do, just ignore it. Unless, of course, we discuss it here, because here we go beyond all the nonsense and the lies and the rubbish that is out there. Good. Questions? So, Tantra Yoga, where do you do Tantra Yoga? All yoga, when done correctly, is in fact Tantra Yoga. Just like all yoga, when done correctly, is Kundalini Yoga. Because yoga leads to energy rising up, the Kundalini effect. Because yoga leads to increasing sattva, reducing the Tantra effect, the flipping left and right of the shuttle. Just at the very beginning of the internet, I started teaching yoga and started advertising, I think, a Yahoo. Yahoo at the time, before Naver. You had Yahoo Korea, which was the site to go to advertise. Now everybody is on Naver, Facebook, but that didn't exist at that time. So I advertised on Yahoo Korea, and somebody contacted me and said, in a very stern way, like, how dare you teaching from Tantra books? Because the Hatha Yoga Pradipika and the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali are tantric books. So that person, a guy, by the way, that guy, being told that Tantra is sex yoga, contacted me and said, you are, in other words, you are a pervert. You are using tantric books. You are a pervert. You are doing wrong. The Hatha Yoga Pradipika and the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, the foundation of yoga, don't mention sex anywhere. Of course, it is part of life, But there is no philosophy or no exercise or anything that has anything to do with sex. So where this strange idea comes from, and the reason why they are tantric books, they are known as tantric books, it's true. Without any mention of sex or sexuality. How's that possible? Because of this story of the loom, in the shuttle in the loom. Hatha Yoga Pradipika and the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, the whole silver lining in both those books is to end the fluctuations between tamas and rajas, to reduce them so that you start functioning better. That is Tantra. Okay, enough said. Let's have a 5-minute break and then we will continue with asana. It is, by the way, it's important that you make notes of these kind of things, because most yoga teachers don't know this. It's what will distinguish you as a real yogi from the many not so real yogis that are out there everywhere.